Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And Kim, today we have no X-Files news at all, as far as I'm aware.
No, again, I've just been chatting with people on our social media over the last week, particularly as Halloween was earlier in the week. We've been talking about what people thought were the creepiest episodes of The X-Files. The only one I think we've viewed so far that's come up a couple of times is Squeeze. But episodes like Via Negativa and Home are also in the running for the creepiest episode of all time.
And we look forward to seeing those eventually. Mulder's still going okay?
Yeah, Mulder's doing fine. Didn't do so well in the last one, but I got another one first try the other day, so yay for me.
Okay, in the absence of anything else of note, I think we'll get to our two episodes, which are Conduit and Jersey Devil. Conduit was first broadcast on the 1st of October 1993, directed by Daniel Sackheim and written by Alex Ganzer and Howard Gordon. Special guest star of note is Charles Chaffee, who reprises his role as Scott Blevins, the assistant director who first assigned Scully to the X-Files. Darlene Morris is out camping with her daughter Ruby and her son Kevin. They are camping beside Lake Okoboji in Sioux City, Iowa. During the night, a flash of light and a rumble seems to herald an alien abduction. Kevin tells his mother Ruby has vanished. After this cold open, Blevins informs Scully Mulder wants to investigate this case off the back of a tabloid headline. He shows Scully the case file of Mulder's sister's disappearance. When Scully presses Mulder, he reveals previous sightings in the area and that Darlene Morris, the person who we saw at the start, witnessed a UFO when she was a Girl Scout. After meeting her in Iowa, Mulder finds that Kevin is transcribing static from the TV. He faxes this to the FBI. Local police relate that Ruby has gone missing multiple times and is considered a juvenile delinquent, and that this disappearance is not a high priority. Mulder and Scully then meet a young woman who is named Tessa, who claims Ruby was pregnant and planned to run away with her boyfriend Greg. Try as they might, they cannot locate him at the bar he works at, though his boss has seen UFOs near the lake. That night, the NSA raid Mulder and Scully's hotel, and it turns out Kevin's binary pages are part of a Defense Department transmission. The NSA then raid Darlene's house looking for more. The family's taken to custody, and they want nothing more to do with Mulder and Scully. After this, Mulder finds that the roof of Darlene's RV is charred, likely caused by the incidents we saw at the start of the episode. The pair go to the lake and find both charred treetops and sand that has been turned into glass. A pack of wolves cause them to follow into the woods where they find a shallow grave containing Greg's body. From his wallet, they learn that Tessa was actually the one who's pregnant. She killed Greg, and Ruby was not actually at the lake that night. Returning to Darlene's house, they find more binary laid out in a huge patch on the floor, which forms an image of Ruby. They go back to the lake once again. Darlene has lost track of Kevin. Scully takes care of Darlene while Mulder pulls Kevin out from the path of a motorcycle group. Scully then has Ruby with her, suddenly, and after she is admitted to hospital, Ruby explains she has been told not to explain her whereabouts, but she does show symptoms of being in zero gravity recently. Darlene refuses to let Ruby talk further about her experiences or wants to talk about her own experiences after a lifetime of mockery. The episode wraps up with Scully listening to Mulder's hypnotherapy tape regarding his sister's abduction, while Mulder sits in a church crying and looking at a photo of what we presume is Samantha. So, Conduit. I thought this was not a good episode. I don't know about you.
I've got to admit, I think I remembered it being better than it actually was.
It's really odd. I mean, we're going to get into it with your conspiracy corner later, but we've got some bizarre, inconsistent aliens so far. One of those is the government, admittedly, we know for sure.
We don't know any of them are aliens.
We don't know any of them are aliens. But we have a lot of inconsistencies here.
Yeah, it's even down, I guess, this time to our experience of an abduction at the start, which we've only really seen once before with the...
Billy Miles.
Yeah, Billy Miles, the kids in the pilot. But this time, the experience that Darlene has at the start of the episode is quite different. You've still got that bright light, but you've got like an earthquake under her RV, you've got the doorknob, and as we see later with the charred roof of the RV, presumably the entire metal structure is superheating.
Yes, and the treetops at the lake and the charred glass on the beach.
Oh, the blast glass, yeah.
Blast glass, yes. Which Mulder's seen the significance of is a bit of a stretch, given Scully says that lightning strikes could have explained the charred treetops. Lightning strike sand doesn't usually make the kind of shape that Mulder holds up, but it's not unheard of for lightning to turn glass into sand. Sorry, sand into glass.
I must admit, I had to look that up after you told me it during the episode. I've heard of blast glass at things like nuclear testing sites and things where it's just the process of the sand becoming so heated that it kind of fuses together to make a form of glass. But I didn't know that lightning could do it, so
Yes.
You and Scully have one up on me on this episode.
But then, I think one of the problems with this episode is that it feels like it's ambiguous to the point of defeat. Because I don't read in the production notes that what they actually wanted to do was read more into Mulder's character and more about Samantha, as we learn in this episode, and her abduction. So I think it actually results in the abduction and the aliens, or whatever the encounter is in this one, not make a whole lot of sense, because we've got the strange abduction at the start. Then we've got Kevin has been affected by this abduction in some way, which has caused him to transcribe binary. So he's now receiving it through static through the TV. Not sure how that works.
Yeah, it's kind of strange as well, because it was very clear in this episode that Mulder is kind of seeing himself in Kevin.
Yes, and it was the case of,
But
did this happen to you, Mulder?
Mulder, as far as we're aware, didn't gain any paranormal abilities from what he saw.
No.
Whereas Kevin has become a bit like the kid from Poltergeist, getting messages through the static TV set.
Oh, it's very Poltergeist. The other obvious illusion, and this is one that was claimed in the pilot, but very obvious here, is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's mostly for the abduction at the start and the cold opening, but it's also the shot of Kevin walking towards the bikes as they're coming up over the hill.
Oh, yeah.
That whole shot is very Close Encounters and how it's been stylized. Going for the back of that, it's a case of when we go back to the lake at the end and they get Ruby back, I don't get the sequence of events because Mulder and Scully meet Darlene in the woods and she says that Kevin's run on past her.
Mm-hmm.
Mulder goes to pursue Kevin, pulls him out of the way of the motorbikes. Scully yells for Mulder, he runs back, and Ruby is there. Not clear where they got her from, if she sort of dropped out the ether, if she was lying beside the path and we didn't see her.
They're kind of shifty little buggers, these aliens.
They really are. So, yeah, not clear where Ruby has come from for Scully to be suddenly attending to her.
Mm.
And we get Darlene's kind of weird assertion later on that she, as far as she's concerned, Ruby has spent the last month on the back of a Harley Davidson.
The whole month.
The whole month. But then the bikers would have to drive down a very narrow path to be the ones who dropped off the back of it.
True, yeah.
So we don't, that doesn't actually track either. And Mulder points out that she has telltale symptoms of spending time in zero gravity, which certainly suggests she's been taken into space.
Do motorbikes go into space?
Oh no, well, okay, write us if you know about motorcycles going into space. We will not accept submissions of Melody of Oblivion or Heat Vision and Jack.
Good obscure references.
Oh, I thought so. If you know what those are, kudos to you. But yes, the alien. I think the problem is the alien abduction in itself doesn't make a lot of sense in this episode. The focus, as we did kind of touch on, is Mulder is seeing himself in Kevin and seeing Ruby as an analog for, as we find out in this episode, she's called Samantha Mulder.
Yeah, we also get a bit more on Mulder's age as well. We found out he was 12 years old at the time of the abduction, and this occurred 21 years ago, so we finally know that Mulder is 33, at least in this season.
Yep, and doesn't have as many degrees as Scully.
No, but he is the FBI's golden child profiler.
Yes, he spent time in Oxford, let's not forget that.
Oh yes, he did.
He did.
Correct. So once again in this episode with Scully as well, we see Scully is very, very sceptical of Mulder's kind of flights of fancy, I suppose, as she sees it.
Yes.
Scully's still very much on Blevin's side, the side of science in this, trying to find the rational explanation, whereas Mulder, aliens, way off.
Yes, I mean, we get some weird stuff at the start. It's the genesis of the case is from a tabloid headline, of which Mulder offers initially no extra evidence, which is...
No, unlike some of the other ones, this isn't something he's likened to an existing file, like in Squeeze. This is literally, Mulder has read this in the press.
But the problem with that is, he immediately shows Scully the corroborating evidence. The sighting by Darlene Morris when she was the Girl Scout.
To be fair, Mulder must have millions of these kind of alien sightings. You said yourself there have been 3.7 million of them.
Oh, no, but my point is, though, that Mulder has put this in on the back of a tabloid headline, and they've said, we're going to say no to this, and Mulder's offered no further evidence, until Scully presses him on it, and then he says, oh yeah, the person who's reporting this abduction saw a UFO when she was a Girl Scout. Okay, so that's your corroborating evidence, Mulder. That's what's got you the case and got you your travel permits.
Maybe we were too hasty here and Mulder did develop psychic powers from his abduction experience.
It's possible. To go back to the whole things being very vague, I mean, when they go back that last time to the lakeside, Darlene says she saw it. And it's a case of, Yeah, can we qualify what that it was? She doesn't want to talk afterwards, which is understandable, but...
I'm not sure about Darlene as being reliable evidence at all in this episode as well, because she also, early on, I think, tells Mulder that this is exactly the same as 1967.
Yeah.
However,
yes.
there's no evidence that any of her Girl Scout friends got abducted or anything like that. They just saw something.
Yeah,
they were in the woods.
That was definitely missed off of the news report Mulder's quoting, if that was the case. And the National Weather Service also saw the very flying saucer-looking ship, which is complete contrast to what we saw in Deep Throat.
And indeed, Pilot was...
We did see in Pilot. We have no idea what it looks like in Pilot.
Oh, am I thinking of Deep Throat? Yes,
yeah,
you're correct.
Pilot was triangular.
Mm.
Continuing with bizarre justifications, because this episode, I don't know, it just feels like motivations was lacking for a lot of it. It's the first time Mulder and Scully go to the lakeside, and they find the scorched trees and the glass that's been fused on the beach. But then they see a wolf come out of the woods, and they chase the wolves into the woods to a shallow grave.
Hmm.
This might be me, being an English person who hasn't gone camping for a long time and has never been camping with wolves, but that would be my first reaction to seeing wolves, to chase the wolf into the woods in the expedition of finding something.
I think if I was hiking and saw a wolf, it'd be like, oh, look, dear, there's a wolf over there.
Yes, there's a wolf. Or even, oh, look, there's wolves coming out the tree line. Feels like they were stuck for justification for how they're going to get to the shallow grave.
I thought that whole bit in hindsight was kind of weird as well, as when Tessa first approached them, it was a bit like your Matrix-y follow the white rabbit conspiracy aspect to it. But I'm not sure why she even bothered to kind of approach them and spin this weird story that was about herself, I guess other than perhaps back cover in case they found Greg's body and she could pin it on someone else.
That appears to be the whole extent of it, but then it's not clear why she killed Greg.
Other than he was the father of her child.
But she didn't seem to want to get rid of the child or anything, or didn't seem to... It seemed to be a consensual relationship from what we could see.
Yeah, that's true. That is a bit strange.
We're not sure why this kid is killed. I mean, it seems... But he's not even dwelled on. He's a road stop along the way.
Or why she didn't go just to the police with this information. Why she had this really secretive way of leaving a message so the FBI met her in a library to discuss this in a deep-throaty sort of manner.
And much like Deep Throat, she's got that theatrics down where she manages to slip away without them being able to pursue her again, just because someone has to knock something over.
Maybe in this world, literally everyone can teleport.
Or they just have someone who can knock things over so people look away, and that split second you can flee.
Or everybody can teleport except for Scully, because she needs to still be able to see nothing.
Well, I mean, admittedly, in this one, Mulder didn't see anything either. I mean, Scully should have seen something, because she was there when Ruby reappeared, so she should have actually been a front row witness to this.
I guess we've got to assume that Scully was doing her wonderful first aid elsewhere and was so intent on this that she didn't see anything.
That's true. Well, we will get to Scully's first aid in the next episode.
She's so good at it.
Got some stuff on her for Jersey Devil. But Greg just seems to be an incidental point that just basically doesn't mean anything. The other aspect to it, which is kind of weird and they don't do anything with, is Tessa says that Ruby wasn't even at the lake that night. But we saw her in the cold opening, she was there. As far as Darlene and Kevin is concerned, she was there. So presumably she meant she didn't come and meet Greg in the woods that night.
That's how I read it when she said it.
But the episode presents it as if it's meant to be she was never even there, which is meant to give you doubt and ambiguity on this whole abduction story in the first place. Is Darlene properly crazy?
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
But they don't really think with that either. That thread kind of gets dropped by the wayside as well.
I guess tying in with the whole abduction stories are so inherently crazy sounding as it is, it takes very little to just make someone sound like they're just tripping.
Yes. Well, it's just going to make me think of, there's a book that came out in the 90s called The Extraterrestrial's Guide to the X-Files. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't really a guide, it was basically a comedy book, but it was from the aliens' point of view, and their encounters with humans across the years. Mm. And a big portion of the book, though, is them messing with Mulder and Scully, like increasing the size of Scully's apartment, or just rearranging Mulder's apartment every time he left. One section of the book is about discrediting UFO witnesses. So it's a case of, paint these slogans on the outside of your UFO, like UFO Mark IV, Air Force, your drunk buddy. And then you get some abduction stories about weird behaviour, like, honestly, these green men grabbed me and then they forced me to drink 15 pints of malt liquor and I don't remember anything until the highway patrol stopped me. Or, I swear, these two just started doing a tango right in front of me. And which, of course, this is a similar gag to the Community gag, where they take him to the air conditioning repair school.
Oh, and the astronaut making paninis.
And the astronaut making a panini, yes. We are also very fond of Community, but that's not really relevant to this one. Okay, actually, no, it is, because...
Joel McHale is in a really late season.
Also, he accidentally tagged Gillian Anderson in as a person for the Community movie.
Oh, yeah, that's true. He got the wrong Gillian, didn't he?
And she's totally down for being in it. So if Gillian Anderson can cameo into the Community film, we can come full circle.
In this episode, we also see even more of Scully and Mulder being at odds. I felt this kind of fell away a bit in Squeeze as well, where Scully was more loyal to Mulder because there were other FBI agents disparaging his ability. In this episode, we have Scully contacted by the NSA about this kid's binary sequences. It's not entirely clear how the NSA came to know about a child writing in binary, but Scully is very quick to give all the information and evidence they have over to the NSA so they can investigate this poor, 8-year-old boy, which kind of upsets Mulder somewhat because it kind of interrupts their investigation and he doesn't feel she should have done this. But again, Scully plays by the rules. She will play by the rules to the absolute letter, even if it kind of endangers Mulder's kind of conspiracy-based investigation in the background.
Yes, I think even more than that, Scully is... I'm trying to think what the phrase for it. It's basically she will give way to authority. When authority asserts itself, she will back down every time so far. We'll see this in Jersey Devil in terms of how she operates, how she behaves in that at first. But she definitely, when the NSA ask her the awkward questions, she caves almost immediately and gives up the Morris family.
So at least, Scully's loyalty is not to the X-Files, not in the way Mulder's is, where the X-Files comes first. The investigation and finding out what happened to Samantha are his priorities.
So we probably do have to go back to Samantha, because this seems to be the core of what the episode was actually going for, was Mulder seeing his experience again in this family and knowing what their situation is going to be like, the not knowing and not being able to find her again. And finding out her name, which is a good thing we didn't actually know before, that Samantha Mulder is the name of his sister, who's gone missing. But as you said before, we get into that weird problem where Mulder doesn't seem to have had this ability forced upon him in the same way that Kevin has.
We talk about what is the point of that
I don't know what the point
either. Is the, we'll call them aliens freeze, whatever has done this to him, be it government or extraterrestrial, is contacting him through a TV screen in binary. Or at least he's transposing it into binary. But when they translate it, not only is it a part of a defense satellite transmission, but you've also got the Brandenburg Concerto, a Shakespearean sonnet, the Vitruvian Man, a double helix, and various other things in there as well. So what is this transmission exactly? I'm
not sure. The best I can come up with is Mulder seems to insinuate that basically it's being in the presence of an abduction gave him this power, which again he didn't seem to wind up with. I'm pretty sure he likens it to flipping to channels, so it's like tiny segments of these transmissions of what Kevin is picking up.
But what's the channel?
Well, that's a good question. The implication seems to be that basically this is what's in the background noise, though the background noise is the sun's radiation in real life, so that doesn't really work. It was also noted at the time, and I haven't looked at the maths for this, if you really want to you can go look at it, is that the amount of binary Kevin's transcribing is not enough to render any of the things they show.
Things like the Vitruvian Man, for
example.
example.
Even that short of the Vitruvian Man, or that short except from the Brandenburg Concerto, the amount of binary he'd have to transcribe to actually accurately record that is just gigantic. It's far more than he has.
I love the fact for the drawing of Ruby as well, is the fact that he's managed to, not only is this binary showing these very specific kind of arts and things like that, but he's also managed to get it perfectly in the shape of the silhouette of his sister.
Yeah, and that's causing another question of, the likelihood of these two aligning like that is basically zero.
Also, what are the NSA doing if they didn't notice when they were holding these individual sheets? It's like, oh yeah, that one does have a bit of an ear on it, and things like that.
I'm guessing it's like a magic eye thing. If you're too close up to it, you're not going to be able to see it.
It was quite obvious when you saw it in the guy's hand, though, that there was some kind of shape there.
Yeah, I think the art director says they had to sort of carefully transpose the ones and zeros in such a way to make it actually visible. But I think there's some quote about how they wanted the looking down onto the picture, you can't see it from the ground level, but you can see it from higher up. It's in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, the X. You can't see the X from the floor, you've got to the upper level. They wanted that kind of effect, but the problem is that transcribing binary makes no sense for this.
This is really the first kind of paranormal thing we've seen happen in the series, is everything else can be explained, even tombs as a genetic anomaly can be explained, but a kid gaining psychic powers and communications through a TV set on a kind of psychic level.
Yes. Well, also, he seems to intuitively understand what's going on at the end when he's talking to Ruby. He says Mulder knows what she's going to say. All he wants is the confirmation ultimately, but it's a case of, Kevin, what have you learned? You are 8. I think.
I
About
guess
8?
he's just being gatekept by his mother, who won't allow Kevin and Ruby to talk with Mulder anymore. Maybe Mulder could have... Well, Mulder is good with people and good at speaking to children in particular. Could have got this information if he'd had more access to him.
Yes, I mean, it is interesting when they go to visit the house that Mulder zeroes in on Kevin very fast. He sits down with him and talks to him about the binary.
Always at his level as well. Whenever you see Mulder talking to someone, he's always on their level, despite being quite tall, which I think shows the kind of idea of Mulder gets how to speak with people, and speak with people in a way that gets the answer he's looking for as well.
Yeah. I suppose the best justification you've got for why Darlene clams up at the end there is the fact that she's coped for however many years of her life being mocked and sort of viewed disparagingly because of reporting this UFO incident. But it's not just her, it's her group of Girl Scouts and the National Weather Service, but somehow she's the only one people are mocking for her repeat viewing. But I'm guessing it's the whole, she's willing to go along with this until you bring the NSA into it. And once you've done that, that's kind of a level beyond the kind of things you're comfortable with.
Well, it must be traumatic for her, as a mother who one of her kids is just missing or kidnapped or something, to have this kind of cold, emotionless government agency. That you see them going in there and trashing her house and forcibly separating her from her child and stuff. Yeah, I think that would make me want to not help Mulder out as well when he's brought this upon them.
Yes.
As much as Mulder cares for people, when you see him kind of investigating these alien encounters, he's also in a frenzy. He's not above disturbing crime scenes and stuff like that because he's just so intent on his search for the truth.
Yeah, perfectly willing to dig up a shallow grave. Though you touched on an interesting point there. Conspiratorial terms, it's not impossible that the NSA are the ones who've intervened and said to Darlene, don't talk to anyone, don't talk to Mulder anymore, or you can get your child back if you go to the lakeside tonight.
I suppose that is possible. It's not anything that you actually see in the episode.
No, I think we're meant to take by implication it's Kevin has said something.
Well, Darlene's kind of chasing him. Kevin has seen or heard something and he's just made a bolt into the forest.
Yeah, he's run away and we don't know. And still, Darlene says she saw it and never articulates what that means.
No, we don't know if it is an entity, like this entity that Mulder saw or felt in the room when Samantha was taken, or it is the UFO.
Yeah, the implied UFO. It's interesting as well that if this is aliens, in contrast to the operation of the craft in Deep Throat. So, Deep Throat, you have a flying triangle that can swoop in almost silently.
And hover,
no disturbing anything, and shine a light down. Conduit, the craft rattles the RV, scorches the roof, superheats the metal.
Makes a lot of noise.
Superheats the door handle. It's a case of, have the aliens progressed in the 40 years since Roswell? Like, they had super stealth technology when they crashed, and that was their test craft, and now they've lost it. So basically, their new ones are clunkers, which are lousy for stealth.
Maybe you've got the idea that the aliens can be retro as well. So, these are...
These are the classic sources.
Yeah, these are the aliens in their Volkswagen Transporter from the 60s that are coming to see people.
The aliens have got back into classic UFOs, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
I also kind of want to touch on the fact of, you mentioned the weirdness of the way Ruby is returned, the fact that Mulder either runs past her or she's just dumped behind him after he's run there.
Yeah.
Why was she returned?
A very excellent question.
If we're liking this to Samantha, who was abducted 21 years ago and Mulder's never seen her since, but has always had this sense that she's not going to be harmed and she will one day come back. But Ruby is returned within a matter of days?
A month, I think.
A month.
It's a month.
But still, that's not 21 years.
Yes, and that's also interesting that when we hear Mulder's hypnotherapy tape, where Mulder felt like he was told by a voice not to be afraid, and Samantha will come to no harm, and one day she'll be returned. And then the doctor, presumably the hypnotherapist, prompts him, like, does he believe? And Mulder wants to, which of course feeds back into his poster, I want to believe.
It's also, it's kind of emphasised when we hear his regression tape, is that Mulder doesn't actually see anything during that abduction either. It's like sleep paralysis. He's frozen to his bed. Yes. He can hear Samantha being taken, but he sees nothing.
Yes.
His only communication with the entity is this voice in his head.
Yeah, a bit odd.
I've repeated several times during this episode, I love the bit where Mulder again plays the skeptic to get the guy to talk about UFOs.
Yeah.
And he pulls back his hair to show that one of his earlobes has been kind of melted away and says, you need to go to later Ogobogie, you can get some killer sunburn there in the middle of the night, which is a super cool, both shocking scene and line.
Yes.
Which I will credit this episode to. I do love that sequence.
But again, we've got the whole aliens using classic sources. They've lost modern technology, so no triangles now. We're on the circular ships. They will also cook you if you get too close to it.
It's the engine overheating in that old Volkswagen Transporter UFO.
What are aliens up to? We'll discuss and find out at some point. Okay, have you got anything else for this episode? Because I think
you've got to the end of my notes other than Conspiracy Corner.
We also watched Jersey Devil. The original broadcast date of this one was the 8th of October 1993, directed by Joe Napolitano, written by Chris Carter. Special guest star is Claire Stansfield, who plays the titular Jersey Devil. She was, and I do not remember who this is, Sid in Twin Peaks.
No, I can't remember.
I don't remember who Sid is. She also played a character called Christina Harper in Frasier for 2 episodes. Now, I do remember the episode, but I don't remember who she is, because she was, I think, someone he was involved with in Dan One in Hell, the one where Frasier goes to the cabin and all his ex-wives show up on all his ex-girlfriends.
I remember the episode, yeah.
So she's in there somewhere, so we'll keep an eye out for her next time we watch Frasier to see if we can spot her.
Is she one of the ex-wives?
She's in 2 episodes, she's one before it as well, so I think she's a current girlfriend. She's not Lilith. Blanked on the other ones.
It's the woman from Cheers.
The woman from Cheers. Yes, Diane, Lilith, and the hippie, who we've never seen before. She's not, no, none of those. She's someone else. Incidentally, we were very amused this week by the Hell Frasier tweet that then led into the Frasier Cannibal episode, which was a lot of fun.
Google it. It's fantastic.
It is very good.
It's perfectly written.
But anyway, I think Kim will now try to give a synopsis of Jersey Devil. Bear in mind, this is not an easy one to keep straight.
Okay, our cold opening this time is in 1947, where we see a family driving through the woods of New Jersey at night. They are forced to stop, and the patriarch of the family is dragged off by something unseen. We then search to the police shooting him. They do eventually find him deceased, unfortunately, and see a large naked man in the darkness somewhere. We do not see this as the audience, but they blast him and presumably kill this man off camera. After the opening credits, the rest of the episode is in present day. It begins with Mulder being approached by Scully. Scully has read something in the paper today about a person who was found deceased in the New Jersey woods, with their arm and shoulder apparently having been eaten away by something with human teeth. She tells this Mulder half-jokingly, which of course causes Mulder to whip out his X-file, dating back to 1947, where he reads about this kind of previous opening kill occurring. He doesn't have a lot of information because the autopsy records of this time have been lost. So they don't know exactly what it was that killed this guy. They go to investigate the killing, but are quickly kind of shown off by the police. The police say that this is a local matter in Atlantic City. They do not want Mulder investigating, or the FBI in general. Mulder and Scully then split up. Scully returns home for her godson's birthday party, where she is set up with a man called Rob, who she agrees to go on a date with. Mulder, taking quite a different approach, remains in Atlantic City and begins speaking to homeless men in the area. He trades his hotel room for a homeless man's box, the homeless man who gives him a kind of sketch of a Bigfoot-like creature he has seen in the area. Mulder believes that by staying overnight he will catch a glimpse of this creature, and indeed he does. But the humanoid creature, who we can tell is very hairy but see very little of, is far too fast for him and escapes onto the buildings of the roofs of the buildings overhead before Mulder can catch up. Mulder is then stopped by the police and thrown in the drunk tank overnight, where Scully is forced to come and retrieve him the following day. Mulder insists on investigating this case and starts getting other people involved. He speaks to a park ranger, Ranger Bools, who has always had a kind of sense that there is something in the woods, likening it to the Jersey Devil legend. He has had one sighting of the creature, who he believed to be a large, naked man who emerged from the woods and was seen moving and sniffing around in an animalistic way. The ranger's never seen this creature again, but has felt it looking at him before, and voices the fact that he never goes out without his gun anymore. Mulder and Scully also visit the Georgetown University, where they speak with an anthropologist, who they have this conversation about apex predators, and what would happen if humans, who are currently an apex predator, were kind of thrown off the top of the food train by something being introduced that was higher than them, which Mulder is likening to a kind of Cro-Magnon Neanderthal throwback missing link, which is of course what Mulder believes this entity is. Scully also goes on her date with Rob. it doesn't go terribly well. He is a nice guy, but just seems incredibly boring and has no interest outside of his own son. Mulder and Scully go out on a stakeout after another body is found in the woods. This body, this time, is a hairy man, but they're not allowed to investigate it further. They do confirm that it is a male. Mulder from this builds a theory that the entity he cited is female, her mate having been missing for a long time is forcing her towards the city to forage for food. Mulder, along with Scully, the park ranger, and Dr. Diamond, form a elite hit squad to go into the factory and search for this woman. Mulder being eventually the one to find her just as the police arrives. She attacks Mulder and badly injures him, but does not have time to do anything further. But Mulder is struck by how beautiful she is. The police intervene and chase the woman into the woods, where they gun her down. When Mulder is horrified by the fact that she is gunned down, just after Mulder himself, with the help of the park ranger, had managed to tranquilise her, the police officer likens it to shooting a rabid animal. When the woman is investigated, they discover that she is not Neanderthal in any way. There is nothing unusual about her bone structure, but she does have human remains within her stomach, showing that she has attacked people recently. In the closing part of the episode, we see a couple of hikers in the woods. The little boy in this hiking group thinks he sees something, but his father dismisses it, though we as the audience see a kind of wild man child hiding in the undergrowth not far away.
Thank you. I remember this episode not being great in the past, but rewatching it is a case of, this is terrible. This is really bad.
Do you want my trivia for this episode now to start you off?
I would like your trivia. I mean, there's a lot. There's actually some more to talk about this episode with just the baffling decisions it has in it.
Okay, I can tell you the inspiration for this episode was when Chris Carter watched a documentary about ants, but I have not found anything that corroborates what exactly this documentary entailed. But it was it's also inspired by the fact that man is the kind of harbinger of his own destruction, like the snake eating its own tail. Okay, the idea that. The other inspiration is, of course, the clues in the name is the Jersey Devil.
Of which this is nothing like the Jersey Devil.
To give you the legend of the Jersey Devil, the Jersey Devil is a very famous American cryptid, which indeed is found in the woods of New Jersey. The story goes back to the 1700s and concerns a woman, or sometimes a witch in various stories, called Mother Leeds. The creature is also called the Leeds Devil for this reason. Mother Leeds, in some versions of the story, was a woman who already had 12 children, and commented that when she found she was pregnant with the 13th, that the child would be the devil himself. Though in other versions she's a witch and the father of the child actually was the devil. But when she gives birth to this baby, it initially looks normal, but then suddenly transforms into this kind of weird equine creature, like an anthropomorphic horse-headed creature with cloven hooves and bat wings, which then gives out an ear-splitting shriek, which is kind of its signature, and disappears into the woods where it terrorizes people for years and years to come. Absolutely nothing to do with this episode, which seems to follow the basis more of that urban legend about wild men living in America's national parks.
Yeah, if you want a more accurate depiction of the Jersey Devil, as far as I understand it, it's either Wolf Amongst Us by Telltale.
The video game.
Or What We Do in the Shadows. I believe in season 4, the Jersey Devil shows one episode.
For a more realistic thing as well, people often liken the classic appearance of the kind of horse-headed winged devil to a hammerhead bat, which has a similar kind of leathery wings and the long muzzle.
And that's presumably where the idea came from originally.
Yeah, I'm not sure if horsehead bats are kind of native to America, but they certainly do look like that.
Yeah. I mean, to pick a point to start, because we have figured out why in some circles this episode is actually quite popular. And it all comes down to Scully and that date.
Rob.
And you quite liked her waistcoat in this, though.
Oh, she looks fantastic in that little brown waistcoat.
Yeah, I did appreciate, as you pointed out, that Scully's maternal and bedside manner is shown to be just as bad in this episode at her godson's birthday party, no less, as it is every other time.
I think it's comparing, as well, how Mulder treats the kid in Conduit just before. Mulder is really, really good with kids. Yeah. Scully, a kid gets hurt right in front of her, and it's like, there, patting him on the back, bedside manner.
Walk him off to the kitchen to meet... I don't know if it's his mother or just the person running the party.
But the person running the party also immediately says, "Oh, Scully, you're so good with kids." It's like, yeah. Is she?
No. And when is she going to have kids? I mean, the very 90s viewpoint of the whole, you will eventually give up your career and have kids idea.
It's also, I guess, the idea of, in Squeeze, we saw how Scully's fellows at the FBI are beginning to kind of see her in a negative light through association with Mulder. And this episode is the "Look, Scully, your life is passing you by while you're on the X-Files" episode.
Yeah. We also get some interesting, the first, and this is probably what people are going for, a Scully-eyed view of Mulder. He's both a jerk, but cute, but obsessed with work. Not that Scully is also obsessed with the work or anything. This is the first downtime we've actually seen Scully have since the series began.
It's sadly with Mr. Nice But Boring. And ultimately, in the end as well, we see that Scully has a chance for a second date with poor Rob, but decides that going to see an ethnobiologist, does Mulder say?
Yep, as a Smithsonian, is more important than spending time with her would-be date, the divorcee.
So I guess you've got a bit of sex appeal in there as well, as this was the rival male for Scully's attention, and she's picked Mulder.
So this, I imagine, is more so than Scully bursting into Mulder's hotel room in her underwear. It's the potential start of shipping Mulder and Scully together. I'm guessing that's Mully, or would that be Skulder? Which one do we want?
MSR, Twitter seemed to call it.
MSR.
Mulder Scully romance.
But, come on, where's the portmanteau? We got to have a portmanteau. Is it Skulder or Mully?
I like Skulder.
Skulder's
quite good.
Skulder's slightly better. I think the other thing we both noticed in this episode as well is that, unacknowledged, but Jaws is a huge influence on how this has been structured and written.
I don't know much about the area of the set, but I got the impression from the episode that Atlantic City is a bit like a mini Vegas.
Yes, it's like Reno, like Vegas. People come here for the gambling and the slot machines.
So you had that idea, like Jaws, of if a lot of cannibalistic murders happened in this city, it would be bad for business.
Yeah. Also, if the publicity of those happens, so that's why the police are very keen to brush this up.
We can't interrupt our Independence Day celebration like in Jaws.
We can't risk truckloads of people coming to Atlantic City. So we're going to make sure that no one talks about the cannibalistic homeless person that's wandering the streets, and we're not going to admit it to the FBI when they come and ask us. We're going to shut down all avenues of communication. We're going to steal a body from the morgue, because the naked man is submitted to the police and it never gets to the mortician.
Not to mention the fact that they conveniently lost the autopsy reports for when they shot one of these wild men in 1947.
Yes.
So I guess you could take it had been legitimately lost over the years, or it's been kind of taken to hide the fact that these murders have been going on for a long time.
I think much like more so Deep Throat than the rest of them were meant to take it, the whole community actively pushing this underground.
Yeah, it's probably not a big scale conspiracy in this one, but certainly the local government don't want people to know about it.
Yes. And the other thing we have to talk about, very sorry, but it's Boobfoot.
Yay, Boobfoot!
At one point, Mulder is shown the picture of the Bigfoot-like creature by the homeless man. That's fine.
It's the standard as you would imagine it, silhouette of Bigfoot walking.
With long hair, though. But then when he's looking through his own files, he inexplicably has a picture of what looks like the classic Bigfoot film silhouette with breasts.
Hence Boobfoot.
And just... it's just impossible to take seriously after that. Particularly when we have a very modern, sexy-looking wild person who's just got a bit of mud on her and sort of give her a wash and I'm sure she'll look
I like the fact
fine.
It did eventually say at the end of the episode that she wasn't a Cro-Magnon man, but it was at the point when she attacks Mulder and he just kind of gazes up at her,
yes.
Despite the fact, as Mulder puts it, she almost rips out his lungs.
Yeah.
But it's like, wow, that's the prettiest Neanderthal woman I've ever seen. She's just slightly grubby with unbrushed hair.
Which calls into question the whole point of it, because Mulder's whole interest in this is the divergent evolution path, or the
idea of the missing link.
Yeah. And the episode just flat out says, that's not what's happening. They're just modern people who went to live in the woods or something. We don't get any more investigation into that, like what caused this, why were they there?
But again, it's modern people who have gone to live in the woods, and unlike something like the Wrong Turn movies, these aren't inbred kind of hillbillies sort of living in the woods.
No.
How many of these things are there to be a breeding pool, given that they've evidently been there since at least the 1940s?
Yes. Or unless that was a completely separate group to this group. I mean, we have absolutely nothing to go on this one.
It does seem to be a common urban myth that's only partially substantiated that you see stories about people living rough in America's parks, but not to the kind of feral human idea of this episode, of course, just people choosing to live in complete isolation.
Yeah. And we also... there's so many weird things. It's like, I always quite appreciate the shooting her with a tranquilizer dart, and it's one of these whole anaesthetiologists get training for this, because if you mess up an anaesthetic, you will kill the patient. And they're just firing, was it bear tranquilizer at her?
I've got to assume that the park ranger, Ranger Bulls, does not have a whole lot of human-dosed tranquilizers.
It's like, they say the police shot her. There's an equal chance that Mulder's got her killed by having her shot by a tranquilizer dart intended for bears.
I also like the fact that when they shoot her, in all Mulder's evidence, she's tastefully covered.
Yes.
You only get that one, as Mulder approaches, you hear someone in the background say, "Oh, look, she was trying to bury herself," which I'm sure is the explanation for why all her bits are covered in leaves quite artfully in Mulder's crime photos.
Yeah, implausibly as well. I mean, it reminds me actually of Hannibal, the TV series.
With Mads Mikkelsen.
Do you remember the episode where people, they were skinned and put into praying angel kind of positions?
Yes.
That was fine, but they had to re-edit the scene because in some shots you could see their buttocks, and that was too much for the network, so you had to sort of cut them off higher than the camera angle was going for.
I see, so creating a sunbird was absolutely fine.
That was fine.
But no.
Yeah. So, as is the X-Files, because you couldn't see hers, we had to cover it with leaves. In a crime scene photos, in case of what is going on.
It was just that throwaway line of, "Oh, look, she's trying to bury herself," that cracked me up.
Yeah, I missed that. I've missed that every other time but this one. That's our justification for how she's been covered with leaves in it.
So in this episode, we got the idea of cover-ups once again. Is, as you noted, the connection with Jaws and the fact that local government doesn't want the tourist trade to be interrupted. So in the case of this one, our kind of cover-up is small scale of, once again, it's a bit like in Squeeze, I suppose, is the local government don't care about the truth. They want this resolved and swept under the rug as fast as possible and no one to know about it, and then we can go back to raking in that money, business as usual.
Yes.
So even though the fact that we kind of exploded the fact that the homeless community in Atlantic City are terrified of this thing, have seen it often, they know it's dangerous, nobody cares about them because who's going to listen to the homeless people?
Well, possibly also being eaten by them as well. We're not sure exactly what extent
they're afraid of it, but nobody ever mentions the fact it's actively preying on them.
No.
I mean, we do exposit the fact that it usually only hunted in the woods. It's the fact that the male has died as the female is trying to find food for her baby and is kind of going further and further inland to get this.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing is the almost throwaway line that, was it Georgetown University or?
Yeah, Georgetown University.
Is one of the places Scully went to university.
Yeah, Dr. Diamond knows her.
Dr. Diamond says, Scully learned something before she left. It's a case of, okay, Scully, which degree came from this one?
I presume that she didn't do much study into anthropology there as well. I assume Dr. Diamond is an anthropologist.
It is odd, isn't it? It's a case of, we actually went to the same university, and I'm going to guess that my professors didn't know your professors whatsoever, or very rarely mixed together.
I would assume so. I think that a lot of professors only knew the students that were directly in their class.
Yeah. How Dr. Diamond even knows who Scully is kind of a stretch, because her closest one has to be her medical degree, but even then he's still the wrong actual discipline there.
I thought the pseudo-philosophy in this episode was kind of interesting, but also out of place a bit as well.
Yes.
Is the whole, it's a long cry from a few cases of cannibalism to saying, oh no, there is this new apex predator at the top of the food chain that's preying on humans. It's like, there are a lot of animals, if pressed, a bear would predate on a human or something like that. It doesn't mean that bears have replaced humans at the top of the food chain.
No, it's also that Mulder didn't sort of leap on that note of the only way we're going to be supplanted by as an apex predator is something incoming above us, which would have to be extraterrestrial by nature.
Yeah.
And he didn't jump on that one as well, which is kind of an odd one for Mulder not to go for.
Yeah, Mulder's more kind of fixated on Boobfoot being a kind of Cro-Magnon man and not...
And she's not, so that's what we're doing with this one.
Yeah, it's weird. Philosophy for philosophy's sake, I think, there in this episode. It's not necessary.
The other slightly strange note I've got on this one contains the infamous blue screen sequence. It's an illustrative of how the X-Files did special effects. There is a shot of Mulder using a payphone, what allegedly is a Atlantic City casino, but in fact it was against a blue screen and basically the whole casino was done from stock footage.
I must admit, I probably wouldn't have noticed it unless you pointed it out, but once you see it, it's jarring.
Yes, it's, as usual, one of these mats where the lighting isn't quite accurate between them and the angle is actually slightly weird if you look at it carefully. Do we have anything else on this anything more on this, I mean, I've got a note about Mulder doing parkour, which was seemingly inspired by nothing when he starts throwing himself across rooftops towards the end of the film.
I felt they exaggerated Mulder's injuries quite a lot at the end as well. When Scully says, "Mulder, she almost ripped your lungs out," and it's like...
It's like he's moving around, he's just holding a tissue to his side and he's still moving.
He does look a bit... That white shirt he's wearing looks a bit bloody towards the end, but I wouldn't go as far to say your lungs were almost ripped out. This isn't the work of Eugene Victor Toombs.
No, I mean, it's a case of... Also, since we've insisted that she has no Neanderthal kind of attributes, she's just got human fingers and fingernails.
And human strength, you would
human
assume.
Strength, yeah. So quite what she's done to him is not clear at all.
Though it is quite funny, the fact that Mulder essentially lets himself get injured because she's pretty. I mean, when she pins him down, he is absolutely blown away by this dirty, naked, wild woman's beauty. Which is the first thing he says to Scully as well, is, "Oh, she's beautiful."
Scully, this is the man you have turned down nice but terribly boring Rob to spend your time with and go to the Smithsonian.
I suppose you've already shown Mulder looking at these kind of centerfolds in his office as well, so that's not your stretch that Mulder is actually, his perfect woman is sexy Bigfoot. Probably why he's got that drawing there of Boobfoot to begin with.
Where did you get that? Right, it's terrible. For the Scully shippers, though, I mean, this episode is the whole, hey, Scully actually likes spending time with Mulder. Who knew? How Mulder feels about Scully, we're going to have... That's not clear at all, yet.
Scully cosplays as a Boobfoot, maybe?
Yeah, I suppose. Mulder and Scully's first date, she's covered herself in mud. And, no part of this is... there better not be fanfic of this out there.
Oh, you know there is. I suppose much like Squeeze again as well, you have your final sting where we could continue this concept. I really hope they don't.
Oh, God.
But you've got the idea of there is at least one more of these things still in the woods, though whether the child could survive on its own is unknown. As I mentioned earlier, you've got to assume there's a kind of breeding pool of these things, so there might be more of them still hiding in the New Jersey woods, ready to come out again.
Yeah, there might be. I don't think they thought that far ahead, really.
No, I think the biggest problem with this episode is there's no tension. It's just...
No.
It kind of has an interesting opening sting and then it doesn't really deliver anymore. It's slow, it's quite boring, there are no scary bits this time or anything like that.
No, there's no humour either. I mean, I don't think there's any gags in this one, really, is there?
You've got Scully's date is maybe worth a chuckle.
I suppose Mulder being in a drunk tank is actually quite funny when he's rigging her up from jail. Oh, I suppose that's the point I had. Technology in the 90s, we're seeing a kind of weird variance at the moment. Mulder, we know, has a mobile phone because of Squeeze. Mm-hmm. Scully has a pager. Which I don't think
it goes off at her date.
Yeah, which I don't think we've ever seen her use before. But she doesn't seem to have a mobile phone.
I'm sure she'll get one at some point.
Anything else you've got?
Nope, I think that's everything.
Okay, so we can have... got only one more episode again. Again, we will retroactively include Jersey Devil if this somehow leads into an overarching conspiracy, but gotta say, I've got some doubts, and we also hope it's not going to be part of any conspiracy going forward. So, Kim's Conspiracy Corner.
Okay, in Conduit, or as of Conduit rather, we have learnt that the entity, if we are assuming that this is the same entity in all of the conspiracy episodes, which is still not referred to as being alien and only as they, can abduct people very quickly. However, the phenomena that surrounds these abductions varies quite wildly. In the pilot, we saw that this involved lost time and bright lights and wind. Now we have seen an alternative one with light, earthquakes, and extreme heat. People can also be touched, even if they're not kind of abducted themselves. This doesn't always occur, as it wasn't the case with Mulder, but alternatively it can cause bizarre effects in the people who are left behind, including psychic powers and the ability to perceive radio waves in a kind of tangible form. Victims are sometimes returned by the entities, but not always, and there is no specific time frame. However, if they are returned, they are viewed as being physically emaciated, with signs of extreme stress and being kept in low gravity. We also have learnt that the entity is possibly telepathic, as Mulder mentions the fact that although he didn't see the entity, it spoke to him within his own mind. I think that's about all we can extrapolate from the conspiracy. Would you concur?
I would concur, thank you very much. Okay, so as usual, if you've experienced the fun of it this point in time, if this episode did in fact inspire you to do some hardcore schools shipping, don't necessarily want examples, but if you now got into the series or into the relationship on the back of this episode,
Well, even if you disagree with us and you actually enjoyed these 2 episodes,
Yes.
I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to know what about these episodes you did enjoy.
Have we got Conduit wrong? Is it actually more instrumental or more important than we've decided that it should be? Please let us know. And things are getting strange42@gmail.com, or on Twitter @getstrange42. We're also on Facebook if you search for Things Are Getting Strange.
Yep, that's correct.
Our start and end music is Envision by Kevin MacLeod, which you can find on incompetech.com. It's licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0.
So, from the both of us, and until next time,
Trust no one.